Hello everyone, thank you for your company. You're about to get some encouraging news against diabetes and cancer. That's from the Prime Minister after sourcing out health assistance from Cuba. Also tonight, the life-changing testimonies of those who've gone through the Anglican literacy program, now into its 24th year. And a good time for members of Parliament to be with their people this Christmas, elections next year. How many people in Papua New Guinea have lost limbs or have even died from diabetes as well as cancer? The good news in the fight against the two diseases, and it's from the Prime Minister, is that there are drugs that can win the fight against them. And Papua New Guinea is about to import the medicine to treat diabetes and cancer sufferers.
Papua New Guinea will start importing medical drugs for diabetes and cancer. It is also a good news for people suffering from these diseases. Prime Minister Peter O'Neill has just returned from Peru and Cuba in South and Central America. He was accompanied by a high-powered delegation to the 6th Asia-Pacific Economic Summit. During his visit, a number of discussions and bilateral relations were signed. Among these was an MOU signed between the government of Cuba and PNG on the importation of medical drugs and doctors. The PNG delegation was impressed with the level of treatment used by Cuban doctors to treat diabetes. Over the next month or two, PNG will start import medical drugs to treat Papua New Guineans suffering from diabetes. Prime Minister Peter O'Neill said the patches of medical drugs will come with specialist personnel.
One of the areas that impressed me most was on the treatment of diabetic patients in Cuba. Cuba has found a medicine that is now able to cure diabetic patients. We don't have to amputate them anymore. This is one of the areas that we are trying to now advance it over the next 2 or 3 months. We will start importing those drugs, and then we will start importing some of their medical personnel to come and implement the treatment of diabetic patients. It is a huge concern. Apart from lifestyle changes, we must make sure that we treat the people who are now suffering immediately so that we don't have to amputate them.
The news was welcomed by Minister for Health and HIV/AIDS.
I'm also happy, Prime Minister, that the diabetes, it's we've had a lot of very positive news about the new drugs that have been developed in Cuba, and PM, yes, we now want to go ahead through you, Prime Minister, that we now have to go ahead, purchase those drugs so that we can immediately use over here in PNG. So that is quite a very good news for our people here.
Not only diabetes, scientific records have proven that cancer can also be prevented from specific drugs developed in Cuba. These drugs will also be available for cancer patients in the country.
Secondly, they have been able to find a cure for cancer patients. And again, we are going to get their personnel to come and help us run our cancer units in PNG. They were able to have up to, I think, 60 or 70% success rate in the treatment of cancer patients in their country. The life expectancy in Cuba is from in 1953 of life expectancy of about 60 or 65 years. Now they're into their 80s, well over 80 years of age. So they've achieved quite a substantial level of health care in their country because of these innovative ways that they've been able to, of course, address their health needs in the country. So I'm very happy.
Medical drugs for sports athletes will also be available to treat injuries. The Prime Minister was also impressed on the maternal and infant mortality rates of Cuba. Cuba has achieved a 4 out of every 1,000 birth of maternal mortality rate. This is the lowest anywhere else in the world. Mr. O'Neill is expected to make an announcement in Parliament early next year on the government's move to address infant and maternal mortality in the country. The health sector will receive enormous support from the government. The recruitment of Cuban doctors to work in the country is a major boost for the sector. PNG is short of about 500 doctors. Cuban doctors will be placed in districts and rural areas. These doctors will be funded under the DSIP and PSIP. Prime Minister Peter O'Neill said this will be short-term basis while PNG continues to train and produce more of its own doctors.
We have said that this agreement is a short-term measure. It will be in place for a few years while we are training our own doctors. What I have committed to the Health Secretary and our doctors and union and our officials is that we will now increase the number of doctors, students who are now going to attend the medical school.
As a short-term measure from Cuba, we're going to get about 20 to 30 doctors initially. And then to start off, and then we try to move out and build up in a big way. And the concentration must be in the districts, not in the city, in the urban centers. And this is over the past. A lot of our young, even our national doctors, refuse to go and serve in the districts. And a lot that have been come through the government sponsorship have all gone into the private sector. So, you know, there are all sorts of reasons. And here we are, the government, is trying to take it and see how best we can do for, you know, for our people. And this is one of the major issues. And I'm thankful that PM and the Secretary have gone to Cuba, and we have come up with those, signed those MOUs, and now we have to now push ahead with it. And
the government will embark on a major drive next year to maintain standards and quality of doctors. As part of the move, the School of Doctors will be funded by the government with an increased intake next year. The Department of Prime Minister and NEC will also intervene to ensure funding and logistical support is maintained.
Mark Kayok reporting there after the break how Anglicare's literacy program has some life-changing testimonies.